The autumn rain pelted against the windshield of my 10-year-old Toyota as I pulled into my parents' circular driveway, carefully maneuvering between the gleaming luxury vehicles already parked there. My brother James's new Porsche took center stage, while my sister Olivia's Mercedes gleamed under the entrance lights. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, adjusting the collar of my simple black dress, an outfit that probably cost less than my siblings' watches. To them, I was Sarah Mitchell, the family disappointment who wasted her business degree on a small consulting firm instead of joining the family's investment empire. If they only knew that Mitchell Consulting was just a front for my real company, Phoenix International, a global conglomerate that had recently acquired 3 of my father's biggest competitors. My small office in the business district was actually just one floor of the 20 I owned in that building. The grand double doors opened before I could reach for the bell, revealing our family butler Harrison, who'd served the Mitchells for over 3 decades. "Miss Sarah." He greeted me with a knowing smile. He was one of only 4 people who knew my secret. "Your family is gathered in the main dining room." "Still driving that heap, little sister?" James's voice boomed from the foyer as I handed Harrison my rain-soaked coat. My brother stood there in his bespoke suit, crystal tumbler in hand, wearing that familiar smirk. "You know, I could help you get a proper car if you just swallow your pride and come work for Dad." I thought about my private collection of vintage and luxury cars, safely stored in my underground garage across town. The Rolls-Royce Phantom, the custom Bentley, the rare Aston Martin, all gathered dust while I maintain my carefully crafted image of modest success. "The Toyota works fine, James," I replied, following him into the dining room where the annual family dinner was about to begin. This tradition had started 5 years ago when Dad semi-retired, leaving James in charge of Mitchell Investments. The same day I'd quietly purchased my first competitor. "Sarah, darling." My mother air-kissed my cheeks, her diamonds catching the light. "We were just discussing James's latest acquisition. The Anderson portfolio. Quite a coup." I bit back a smile. The Anderson deal had been mine, executed through a series of shell companies. James had simply acquired the scraps I'd left behind, thinking he'd orchestrated a masterpiece. "Impressive," I murmured, taking my seat at the massive mahogany table. Olivia was already holding court at one end, detailing her latest charity gala. "You should have been there, Sarah," she said, pausing her story. "Though I suppose these events are rather expensive." She trailed off, examining my simple jewelry with poorly concealed pity. If she only knew I'd anonymously donated half the gala's funding through one of my foundations. The other half had come from the proceeds of a single day's trading. Dad sat at the head of the table, still commanding attention even in semi-retirement. "James tells me your consulting business is stable," he said, making the word sound like a disappointment. "The offer to join the family business still stands. Even in a junior position, you'd do better than struggling on your own." I thought about the meeting I had tomorrow, finalizing the purchase of Mitchell Investments' largest remaining competitor. The acquisition would be announced next week, sending shockwaves through the financial world and likely causing my father's company significant losses. "I'm comfortable where I am, Dad," I replied, accepting a glass of wine from Harrison. He gave me another subtle smile. He'd been the one to alert me 5 years ago when Dad had started making risky investments, putting the family legacy in jeopardy. "Comfortable?" James snorted. "That rust bucket you drive says otherwise. When was the last time you even had it serviced?" "Speaking of services," Olivia chimed in, "my new driver is amazing. Ex-military, trained in evasive maneuvers. Much better than dealing with traffic yourself, Sarah. Though I suppose a driver's salary would be rather beyond your means." I fingered my phone in my pocket, thinking of Thomas, my head of security, and the fleet of luxury vehicles he managed. One text and he could have a dozen professional drivers here in minutes. "The Toyota gets me where I need to go," I said mildly, watching James roll his eyes. "Where you need to go," he laughed. "The only place that cars fit for is the junkyard. I'm embarrassed to have it in our driveway. What will the neighbors think?" "James," Mom scolded half-heartedly, "be nice to your sister. Not everyone can be as successful as you." The irony nearly made me choke on my wine. Last quarter, Phoenix International had generated more profit in a week than Mitchell Investments made in a year. While James played at being a titan of industry, I was quietly reshaping the global financial landscape. I hear the Mitchell building is under new ownership, Dad mentioned, frowning. Some mysterious international corporation. We tried to bid on it, but they wouldn't even take our calls. Phoenix International, James supplied, straightening his tie. Nobody knows much about them. Very secretive operation. But don't worry, Dad, I'm working on a plan to compete with them. I hid my smile behind my wine glass. The Mitchell building had been my first major acquisition, bought through a labyrinth of shell companies. The fact that my family's company now rented space in a building I owned was just one of life's little ironies. Sarah, Mom said suddenly, what's that smile about? Have you met someone? You know, James's friend Michael is single. Just enjoying the wine, I replied, thinking of the vintage it actually was, a $10,000 bottle Harrison had secretly swapped for the one James had bragged about providing. The butler caught my eye as he served the first course, and I saw him suppress a grin. He'd been my grandmother's trusted employee first, and she'd taught him to recognize true business acumen. When she'd passed, leaving me her worthless old diaries, only Harrison had understood their real value, detailed records of hidden investments, secret accounts, and business strategies decades ahead of their time. Well, James declared, raising his glass, here's to another record year at Mitchell Investments. Though I suppose some of us, he smirked in my direction, will just have to celebrate the small victories. Like keeping that Toyota running for another month. I felt my phone vibrate, a message from my CFO about tomorrow's acquisition. Everything was in place. By this time next week, the financial world would be reeling from the revelation of Phoenix International's true ownership, and the Mitchell family would learn that success doesn't always arrive in a Porsche. But for now I simply smiled and raised my glass. To small victories, I agreed, catching Harrison's knowing look. The rain continued to pour outside, drumming against the windows of the Mitchell mansion. My junk, Toyota, sat in the driveway, playing its part in an elaborate charade that was about to come to a spectacular end. The dinner continued its predictable course, a symphony of subtle jabs and condescension orchestrated by my siblings. I maintained my composed facade while checking the messages discreetly arriving on my phone, updates about tomorrow's major moves that would reshape the financial landscape. Sarah, you're being awfully quiet, Olivia remarked, cutting into her perfectly cooked salmon. Usually you at least try to contribute something about your, what do you call it? Boutique consulting practice. Before I could respond, James jumped in. Speaking of consulting, sis, one of our junior analysts mentioned seeing you at the Preston Hotel last week. Don't tell me you're actually landing serious clients now. I remembered that day clearly. I'd been there for a confidential meeting with the board of directors from Asia's largest investment firm. Not that James needed to know that Phoenix International was about to expand its global reach even further. Just a small project, I said vaguely, taking another sip of the expensive wine that Harrison had secretly swapped in. The Preston. Dad's eyebrows rose. That's rather ambitious for your level, Sarah. Those rooms run thousands per night. Please tell me you're not getting in over your head. I thought about the fact that I own the Preston Hotel Group, along with a chain of luxury properties across 3 continents. The small project had been finalizing a $2 billion acquisition over lunch in my private penthouse suite. My phone buzzed again. A message from Thomas, my head of security. All preparations complete for tomorrow. The Rolls-Royce Phantom and full fleet are ready on standby. Shall we proceed with Phase 1? I typed a quick yes, while James launched into another self-congratulatory story about his latest brilliant investment strategy, ironically, one that I'd deliberately leaked to him through a third party, knowing it would keep Mitchell Investments distracted while I acquired their target company. Oh, that reminds me, Mom chimed in. James, tell Sarah about your new car collection. Maybe you could give her some advice about upgrading from that Toyota situation. James's face lit up. Just added a limited edition Ferrari to the garage. Only 10 made worldwide. He pulled out his phone to show photos. That makes 7 luxury cars now. Not that you'd understand the appeal, Sarah, given your practical approach to transportation. I thought about my private collection, 43 rare and luxury vehicles, including 3 of those limited edition Ferraris. The same ones James had tried desperately to acquire but mysteriously couldn't find available for purchase. 7 cars. Olivia looked impressed. That's incredible, James. Though I suppose when you're as successful as you are. Harrison appeared at my elbow, refilling my wine glass with practiced discretion. "Miss Sarah," he murmured, just loud enough for only me to hear, "everything is in place for tomorrow's announcement. The financial press has been notified." I gave him a subtle nod. Tomorrow at exactly 9 a.m., every major financial news outlet would simultaneously reveal that Phoenix International had acquired Mitchell Investments' largest competitor, along with 3 other key players in the market. The business world would finally learn the true identity of Phoenix's mysterious CEO. "Really, Sarah," Dad said, drawing my attention back to the table, "that car of yours is becoming a liability. What if you lose potential clients because of it? Image matters in this business." "Speaking of image," James smirked, "I saw your car leaking oil in the driveway. Honestly, it's embarrassing having it parked next to my vehicles. Why don't you at least park it around back?" Something in me snapped. 5 years of maintaining this facade, of smiling through their condescension, of pretending to be less than I was, it all crystallized into a single moment of clarity. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to Thomas, "Bring the rolls." And not just one. "What are you doing?" Olivia asked, noticing my slight smile. "Ordering an Uber because that Toyota finally died?" "Not exactly," I replied just as Harrison appeared again. "Miss Sarah," he announced formally, loud enough for everyone to hear, "your cars have arrived." The confusion on their faces was priceless. "Cars?" James scoffed. "What cars?" The sound of multiple powerful engines filled the air. Through the dining room's floor-to-ceiling windows, we could see a procession of vehicles turning into the driveway. First came the Rolls-Royce Phantom, its midnight blue custom paint gleaming even in the rain. Behind it, a Bentley Continental, an Aston Martin DB11, and a Mercedes Maybach rolled in with military precision. The color drained from James's face as he recognized the rare Ferrari, identical to his, but in a custom color he'd been told was impossible to obtain. Car after car filed in, each more impressive than the last, until the circular driveway resembled a luxury car show. What is this?" Dad stammered, standing to get a better look. I stood calmly, straightening my simple black dress. "My cars, Dad. Well, some of them. The rest wouldn't fit in the driveway." "Impossible," James whispered, pressing his face against the window. "These cars, they belong to Phoenix International," I finished for him. "More specifically, they belong to its CEO." I paused, letting the moment stretch. "Me." The silence that followed was deafening. Olivia's fork clattered to her plate. Mom's hand flew to her throat, clutching her pearls. Dad slowly sank back into his chair. "Harrison," I called, not taking my eyes off my family's shocked faces, "I believe it's time for that special bottle of wine I had you set aside. The one from my private cellar." The butler smiled broadly for the first time in years. "Right away, Miss Sarah. The Romaniconti 1945, I presume? The one valued at $558,000 per bottle." James choked on his wine. The bottle he'd been bragging about earlier suddenly seemed far less impressive. You're Phoenix International?" Dad's voice was barely a whisper. "The company that's been acquiring everything in sight? The one that owns the Mitchell building. And the Preston hotels," I added. "And about 60% of the companies James thinks he's competing with. Oh, and that charity gala you were talking about, Olivia? I funded it. Anonymously, of course." Thomas appeared in the doorway, immaculate in his uniform. "Miss Mitchell, your Rolls-Royce awaits. Shall I have the others returned to the garage?" "The garage?" James repeated weakly. "My private collection facility," I explained. 43 cars at last count. Though I usually prefer to keep things practical. I glanced meaningfully at my Toyota in the driveway, the perfect cover for a woman who'd spent 5 years building an empire in secret. "Why?" Mom finally managed to ask. "Why hide all this?" I walked to the window, watching the rain bead on the pristine surfaces of my fleet. "Because 5 years ago when I proposed modernizing Mitchell Investments, you all laughed me out of the boardroom. Dad said I lacked business instincts. James said I should stick to simple tasks. So I decided to show you exactly what my business instincts could do, just not under the Mitchell name." "The Mitchell building," Dad said, suddenly, realization dawning. "The acquisitions, the mysterious competition. All this time it was you?" "All this time," I confirmed. And tomorrow at 9 a.m. the whole world will know. Phoenix International is announcing its latest acquisition. Which company? James asked, though from his ashen face I suspected he already knew. I smiled, remembering all the times they'd mocked my old Toyota. All of them, dear brother. Every major competitor Mitchell Investments has left. By tomorrow afternoon, your company's stock will have dropped by half. Unless what? Dad leaned forward, his dinner forgotten. Unless you're ready to discuss a merger. On my terms, of course. The rain continued to fall outside, creating halos around the headlights of my luxury fleet. In the driveway, my faithful old Toyota sat among the world's finest vehicles. A reminder that true power doesn't need to show off to be real.